If you're somebody who struggles with keeping your train of thought, or if you freeze during presentations or in meetings, if you're uncomfortable speaking to a group of people, this is for you. Today I want to focus on improvisation in music versus unscripted speaking and really thinking. Are they the same thing? And I'm coming at this being an improviser myself. So I have an easy time improvising in music. I find it very comfortable. So I was kind of curious as to why this is so hard for me. It seems like it should be easy, but it's not. Welcome to Keep the Flow. If you're a regular here, you probably realize this is completely different, and that's because this episode is going to be completely different because I'm going off script. Well, actually, it's not completely unscripted. I do have an outline. I have notes in front of me, which I'm going to have to refer to, and this is going to require some editing for sure. So you don't think it's going to be some stream of consciousness the whole time. I'll be going back and forth because I'm on the spectrum and I have a hard time keeping my train of thought, which is part of the reason I'm doing this, just kind of trial by fire. This is actually my 4th attempt at making this, and it's not easy. And even though this is the 4th time I'm trying it, I still feel uncomfortable. It's really about the fear of what comes next, which I think is really what's so comfortable about having a script, is that you don't have to wonder that at all. You don't have to worry. You're just reading something and it's already been mapped out and you just have to stick to the plan, Whereas this is much more, I have a map in a way. I've plotted a course, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. And that in and of itself is kind of unnerving if you're not used to doing it. So I did a lot of research about this and I come to find out these are learnable skills. We don't have to be like this. And I'm not saying that you can, cure autism or cure ADHD or whatever, but we can get better at communicating and get better at thinking more clearly. I have 3 exercises I want to share with you that is going to make us better communicators and clearer thinkers. Are you in? Oh, good. Let's go. So the paradox is that I'm a jazz musician. Like, I'm improvising all the time. It's kind of just part of my life and just something that I do. So that feels very comfortable to me. And when I started trying to do the podcast, and if I tried to do an unscripted episode, it was a disaster. And I was so uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable now for sure, but I've been doing this for the podcast. I've been doing for 1.5 years, and I've been on camera for about 1 year, I think. And it's still hard. But in a live context, I've always had this fear of public speaking. I'm the kid that would get up to read something in class and just freeze. I'm coming from also being a writer, and I started writing articles on medium.com, articles about creativity. And at some point I turned around and I said, well, if I just read these into a microphone, they could be a podcast. So that's what I did. And there is a certain comfort, even as hard as that was, there's a certain comfort having a script and knowing exactly what comes next all the time. Whereas as a musician, I'm very comfortable with not knowing what comes next. And in fact, I find that kind of thrilling, really. Like when I'm in situations and things start to happen that are unexpected, that's really where I want to be all the time. But the same principles that allow me to improvise freely as a musician can be applied to speaking and really just thinking. So we're going to go over those today. But first, let me show you how jazz actually works. So the misconception that a lot of people have is that jazz musicians are just making everything up, which, okay, well, sometimes that's true. Sometimes there are situations that things are just completely freeform. But usually we have some sort of structure. We have a melody, we have a set of chord changes, and we have a certain number of bars that create a form or some sort of cycle that we're looping through. Sometimes it seems like people are reading each other's minds when actually there is a healthy dose of structure that's undergirding that telepathy. And that's exactly what we can do when it comes to unscripted speaking and thinking. But what's actually going on in your brain when you do this? You might have seen this TED Talk that was going around a few years ago with Dr. Charles Lim, who did research on jazz musicians, where he took jazz musicians and put them into an MRI machine and had them improvise while they're in the machine. It's really interesting. He would look at the way their brains were lighting up when they were playing something that was memorized, that sounded like it could be improvised, but it wasn't. It was something that was written out and they memorized it. And then they did actual improvisation. And he also did this with rappers, so that he showed that the same parts of the brain that deal with language are also dealing with music. And I think we already knew that, but the interesting thing was when you throw improvisation into the mix, it actually deactivates another part of the brain that is giving us inhibitions and making us careful. So it's actually allowing us, like, this is the thing that's allowing us to improvise and to get into the flow state. I mean, there was always some sort of structure involved, and the rapper had a beat and certain words that were placed in different places in the song or in the rhythm. So the big discovery is that when it comes to the brain, music and language are very similar things. But when you throw in improvisation in either one, it's basically like turning off our inner critic when you're doing it well. And I guess that's the thing that we need to get to. We need to get to the point where we're not criticizing or judging ourselves in the moment. So when we have that little bit of structure, it allows us to relax and be more creative. But how can we apply this to speaking? I like to think of this as making a lead sheet. A lead sheet is basically the simplest form of sheet music that you can have as a jazz musician, where you just have chords and melody, and you can see how many bars there are in the different sections of a tune. Like a simple version of this would be, say, like an AABA form, where you have an A section that's 8 bars that repeats, and then you have a B section that's 8 bars, and then you come back to the A again. So it's AABA, or ABBA, or not ABBA, that's ABBA. They're from Sweden. Check them out. So that's really all I need. If I sit down to the drums, I don't even have to know what song I'm playing. If you just tell me, it's a 32 bar form, AABA, and I can just improvise on that. So we need to get to that point when we're speaking and create our own lead sheets. So this reminds me of actually Alan Alda, the actor. Alan Alda. Whenever he has to say anything or get up and give a speech or whatever, he always has 3 things that he's going to say. And this gives him enough of a structure that he never has to feel nervous or, wonder what's going to come next. He knows he has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And like for this episode, it's a little more complicated. I have actually 7 sections. So my lead sheet is like, you could think of it as 7 sections or 7 chords. But I have an opening, I have the problem, I have insight, I have the science, and then I have the method, which is where we are right now, which is building your own lead sheet. And then I have practice, which is number 6. And then I have the closing. But with each section, I know that I have to trust myself to be able to say whatever needs to be said and deal with the material as it comes. But having that structure mapped out gives me enough of a safety net that I know I can be comfortable. I can always refer back to it and see what's coming next. So that sort of alleviates the fear of what's coming next. So if you're going to do that, you have basically 4 steps. You have to identify what your melody is. So this would be like the one thing that you really want to focus on, that you want to say. What is your main point? For instance, mine today is improvisation and jazz and unscripted speaking are basically the same skill. Step 2 is map your changes. With this, you can have like between 3 and 7 points. I'm right at the limit here. These are your chord changes. You break down your main point into different subpoints. And then inside of that, step 3 is you have to know what notes work on the chords, right? So then that's like break it down even further. So each one of those subpoints can have 2 to 3 subpoints. For all of this, you just want prompts. You just want phrases. You don't want full sentences. You don't want it to turn into a script. You have to accept that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be different. Like I've done this episode now a bunch of times. Like when you go in the studio, when I go to record an album, we'll do multiple takes, sometimes a lot. I mean, I think the most I've ever done is like maybe 20 takes of a song in a session. That was pretty extraordinary. And then sometimes you listen back and it's like, well, actually the first one was the best because then that was the freshest, you know? When you're doing something like this, where you're either giving a presentation or doing a podcast or speaking to a group of people, you know that the next chord is coming. You know that there's a transition that you need to do. You know that, when you get to these places, you have to trust that you'll know what to say. Try to just relax and enjoy it. Step 4 is practicing your transitions. So now that you have the lead sheet, you have to go back and say, okay, I need to figure out how do I get from one chord to the next. Jazz musicians practice typical things like a 2-5-1 progression over and over again to find all these different possible ways for the voice leading to connect these chords. And you just get comfortable with it. It becomes second nature. But I think there's a lot of musicians that maybe focus too much on the complexity of like harmonic structure and things like that, and maybe forget about all of the melodic content that is in music and how important that is as an ingredient for the improvisations, because that's kind of what we're always referring to. I'm always tying it back to the main point, to the main melody. Like when I start to improvise, that's going through my head the whole time. I'm hearing the melody over and over in my head, and I'm playing around it. So know the material, know what you're talking about. But that brings me to my next section. Practicing your scales. We have to practice our scales just like any musician would. So this has to do with working memory. And if you don't know what that is, I didn't know what it was before I started researching this, but it's basically the ability to hold more than one idea in your head at the same time and generate new ideas, connect these ideas. It's basically like the mental muscle that allows us to improvise. So one exercise that you can do is I like to call dropping an anchor. And I really got this from improv comedy, which I've never done improv comedy. It seems like it might be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I should try it. But one of the things that they do is you get a phrase and then you try to remember that phrase. You try to refer back to it. This exercise is kind of based on that. If you have a phrase that just something random, it could be anything, like blue bicycle, and you write that down on a piece of paper and turn the paper over, and then you just try to talk for like 30 seconds about something completely unrelated. And then I would just think about, okay, what was the thing? Blue bicycle, right? But it's okay if you can't remember it, and you flip over the paper and you just try again. Or write down a new phrase. Just do that over and over again. Pretty quickly, you'll start to see some results, improved memory. As a testament to how hard this actually is, I had to, it got so dark outside. I was using just the natural light from the window here and recording this on my phone, and my phone died. So then by the time I got my phone charged back up, it got dark, and so I've had to turn on some lights. I'm going to bring my notes back up and see where we were. So exercise 2 is what I call building without a plan, but it's actually based on something that they teach you in drama school, which again, I haven't done drama school, but I've been researching this. And I know about this exercise they do where you basically have a group of people standing around and each person says a word, and you go around and you try to just build off of the word of the last person and creating sentences. But when you're by yourself, you don't have people to play off of. So a version of this that you can do is to just start with a sentence and just pick some random sentence like, I had a cup of coffee this morning. And then you just try to build on it. You set a timer. It could be for, 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. And you just go and you try to build on, basically just make a stream of consciousness. Try to build a chain that makes sense, that relates back to the previous thing that you said. I could start with, I had a cup of coffee this morning, and then I go to, my breakfast this morning was overcooked. And then that reminds me of the time I had an overcooked hamburger and the chef came out and was really apologetic. And then I could say, well, that reminds me of the time that I heard this chef on a podcast that was talking about how people are sometimes scared to send food back to the kitchen because they think somebody's going to spit in it and they're going to be irritated or something. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The thing that is often the most understandable thing is if the food is not warm. If it's something you order that's supposed to be hot and it comes out and it's cold or it's not hot enough, that affects the flavor of the food. So you should definitely send it back if that happens. It reminds me that when I take my dog Penny out, it's incredibly cold here now. It's minus 5 degrees Celsius. It's not comfortable, but I have to do it and I have to dress really warmly. So I need warmth in my food, I need warmth in my clothing, and then I can come back and say, it's great to have a warm cup of coffee, just like I did this morning. And you can lose the thread, but it doesn't really matter. It's like you just keep building and then try to just practice coming back to that thread, to the beginning, to your original statement, and completing the circle. So the third exercise is building a mini lead sheet. And this is really, you just have 4 sections and you just have one point that you're trying to make. And you can do this when you're driving or when you're on a walk or whatever. People are going to look at you, but they'll assume that you're on your phone. Just put some earbuds in and they'll think you're talking to somebody on the phone. People already think I'm crazy, so I don't care. But you have an observation, you have an example, you have insight, and then you return to the main point. So it's a very similar thing. You're trying to complete this circle, but you're doing it in a concise way. You decide you're going to do a 2-minute talk, basically like a mini TED talk, which reminds me of this thing that it took me way too long to learn. When I go out on stage as a musician, I let it all hang out. I mean, I'm fully clothed, but I'm uninhibited. I just let things flow, and I'm not really worried about making mistakes because the way that I think is that there are no mistakes, right? Things happen and you react to them, and that's basically all I'm doing. I'm playing with the other people, I'm interacting, I'm trying to be present. That's the most important thing. I'm trying to be as present as I can be. So This is vulnerability, right? I'm showing the audience who I really am as a musician. This is how I really think. And so when I'm doing this, that's really what I want to get to. I want to get to that same level of vulnerability when I'm talking to the camera, or if I'm addressing a crowd, when I'm talking to people. I don't want to always try to come with the most polished, slickest version of reality, that's not real. I want that raw creativity because that's what I like. When I listen to music, I want somebody who feels like they're searching for something, that you're along with them on this journey, and they're trying to find this thing. Same thing with anything, with drama or comedy. I want that raw creativity, and that's a scary thing. It can be scary, but that's the thing that's going to get you the real connection. You have to just allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to make mistakes, allow yourself to not care, right? We have to try to let that part of our brain become inactive, like from the experiment with the guys in the MRI machine. You just gotta let it flow, let things happen. And I mean, granted, I'm editing out most of my mistakes in this video, but people want to see that version of yourself. They want to see the real you. They want to see what it's like for you making decisions in real time. So being vulnerable is scary. It's uncomfortable, right? I mean, even like I've been doing this now. This is my 4th attempt at making the video, and it's still uncomfortable for me. I'm still sitting here talking, and I'm like, but I have the structure. So it's like I always have this safety net I can refer to that keeps me on track. And I'm developing these skills, I'm doing these exercises, and I'm developing my working memory. So I know it's just going to get better. If I keep doing it, it's just going to get better. So what I want you to do this week, little homework assignment, make your own lead sheet, just a small one for something that you have coming up. And that could be, like a work presentation, or an awkward conversation that you're not looking forward to. Or it could be, just for a story that you want to tell at dinner one night. Write it out. 3 to 5 key points. Practice it out loud 3 times at least, letting each time be different, right? Let the versions of the presentation or the lead sheet, let your interpretation of it be different every time. It's not like you have to memorize word for word what you're going to do. But the hard part you really have to focus on is the transitions, like getting from one thing to the next. I mean, that is, for me, that's the hardest thing. I have to keep looking at this thing. You're not aiming for perfect, though. You're trying to be present in the moment, and you're trying to bring the audience into your process, really. Not that you want them to see you struggling, but that you want to be open enough that you can show who you really are when you're doing this. You're not just taking on some character, some version that you wish you were like, or that you think people want to see. Just be yourself. I hope this was helpful. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, as I've said many times throughout this thing. I made a lot more mistakes, so it's gonna be a lot more editing, but I felt more present while I was doing it, right? I'm more connected to what I'm trying to say, and I hope that comes across. Thanks for hanging out with me while I'm practicing what I preach. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, keep the flow.